Welcome to the See What She Can Do collaborative resource between the Paramazing Circle and the Women's Coaches Circle. We're excited to bring you this special edition where we have an athlete and two coaches that are joining us for a panel discussion today. I'm going to start by introducing each of our panelists, and then we'll get into a series of discussions where we will talk about how to provide supportive spaces for para-athletes to participate within clubs and for them to be successful in their careers. Today, we're very fortunate to hear from individuals who've had a very successful coach-athlete relationships that has contributed to this success on the field of play. This second component will include three panelists: Jessica Lewis, who's a three-time Paralympian in para-athletics, a motivational speaker, a certified therapeutic recreation specialist, and she's been competing internationally representing Bermuda for the last 11 years. Thom, who's one of her coaches, is a three-time Paralympian in para-athletics. He was on the Canadian national team for 16 years and was part of the Canadian 4x400 meter relay team that won bronze at the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. Curtis also holds the Canadian record in the T54 400 meter event with a time of 42.2 seconds, which he has had since 2012, and he started his coaching career in 2018. Lisa Meyers, who is Jessica's other coach, is the head wheelchair racing coach and director of para-athletics with Cruisers Sports, one of the largest multi-sport disability clubs in the country. Lisa has been coaching for over 9 years in wheelchair athletics, working with athletes from the grassroots level right up to high performance program, where she recently coached at the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games with Team Canada. Lisa is a passionate advocate in the adaptive sport community and continues to develop new and innovative programs for supporting individuals with a physical disability in their sport pursuits. So we are so excited to have the three of you here today to share with us and talk a bit about your journey, coaching together, competing together, being out on the field of play together, and what extensive resumes that all of you have. So I'm excited to jump right into the questions and hear directly from you. So coaches, clubs around could really learn from your relationship and working together. So I'm going to start with Jess. Toss a question your way. How did you know that Curtis and Lisa were the right fit for you as an athlete?
So our circumstance to how we came to working together is a little bit different than just kind of the traditional an athlete looking for a coach. When I moved to Canada, I was coached by Thom, who is Curtis's father. And unfortunately, in 2017, Ken passed away. My training group that has Austin and Isaiah, who all compete for Canada, we were in need of a new coach. And, Lisa had just moved to Ontario. And her original plan was to kind of shadow Ken, as well as work with Cruiser Sports, which is the club that we're all a part of. And she kind of just got thrown in right into the deep end and came on the high performance side. And this is when Curtis was still competing as well. So Lisa kind of came in and took us all on. And, I'm so incredibly grateful to her for stepping in at such a hard time, when we were all grieving Coach Ken. And, she was really fantastic about, helping us to continue to believe in our dreams, to continue to believe in the sport, and really gave us a safe space to deal with our emotions. And, she wasn't really, they're just trying to force us in a new direction. She really gave us that time to grieve. And then it got a little bit tricky because Lisa became one of the national coaches for Canada. And since I represent Bermuda, I needed to have a coach that could come with me as Bermuda's coach to, the bigger competitions. And that's when Curtis was retiring from the sport. And he so graciously, stepped in to be my personal coach. And, I just have so much respect for him for, coming in at a time and he was not only dealing with the loss of a coach, but a loss of his father. And he really wanted me to, not lose out in the sport. So our circumstance definitely is a little bit different. But the both of them just have so much passion for the sport and so much passion for just helping people, become better athletes and better people. That I think it was just, a perfect fit. And, they make training fun, a fun atmosphere. So, you enjoy going there. And we've definitely become, a huge, huge family. And I'm just so grateful to the both of them.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And I think knowing sort of the history within cruiser sports and the club that it is and the leader that it is across the country, by providing a space and environment for both coaches and athletes to thrive. And so to hear your story reiterates that, that really to hear about sort of Curtis transitioning into retirement after competing for so many years and ensuring that you had the opportunity to continue to compete and be successful and that place that focus really, I think is a testament to Curtis and hopefully I'd probably sort of knowing from his experience of being an athlete and what it means as an athlete to have a coach that is supportive of the athletes. And that's a good transition into my next question. Curtis, as an athlete, you probably learned quite a bit about what worked and what didn't work for you in terms of your coaches and the different individuals that you had there to support you. So what did you take from your experience as an athlete and transition that into your coaching role? What were some key things, or how did you prepare yourself to transition from that athlete role into that coaching role and be able to support athletes to continue to go after their goals?
Honestly, I got thrown into it. Like Jess said, I dove into the deep end. I didn't want Jess to lose out on the sport. And I kind of just took what I learned as an athlete throughout all the training that I was put through, and just kind of put that towards what I wanted, what I would get her to work towards or on. So it kind of just, I guess, luckily I picked up stuff while I was being an athlete. It's and I'm still learning, I think no matter how much you learn before you become a coach or as an athlete, you're always learning. You're always figuring new things out, new challenges, new ways to motivate, push, and all of that. So it definitely was different. But I guess it would have been a lot of my previous athlete side learning, which brought me to be able to coach Jess.
Great. Thanks, Curtis. And I love your point about, like, right off the bat, you're like, I'm always learning. Like, as much as you sort of learn and you feel like, okay, I've got this. And then things change, things evolve. There's new things that come out. But that's part of the process, is not just assuming you have to know everything right from the start. So I think that message is really critical, that it's a learning process and you grow and learn together as an athlete and coach. So I appreciate you sharing that and delivering that message. So Lisa, can you tell us a bit about how you prepared to coach within the cruiser sport environment, within the para-athletic environment? What did you do? What are some of the steps that you took to prepare as a coach to be successful and support the athletes?
Yeah, so as Jess said, I was kind of thrown into it as well. But I was fortunate enough, before I moved to Ontario, I worked for BC Wheelchair Sports Association, and I was our director of, or I guess I was a program coordinator, and my kind of focus area was wheelchair athletics, and I coached seated throws out there as well. So it was my job to build supportive environments for athletes to come and try sport for the first time. And so when I came out with cruisers, I kind of had some of those building blocks or those understandings in place, and then looked at it through that coaching lens. And I'm a really big believer in the athlete experience and that positive, whether it's a positive first experience or just a continuous positive, fun environment. So whether an athlete just wants to come out and be physically active, or they want to go to the Paralympic Games, how do I create that environment or that experience for them that supports that individual athlete? Based on their past experience, their disability, whatever it is that they're kind of coming into the program with. And so for me, it was kind of, we're in a unique situation where, as Jess had mentioned, Ken had just passed away, and I really wanted to make sure that they had that space and they were supported in that grieving process, but then try to look at ways of like, how can we grow this program and make that space more accessible to others? So looking for a more accessible space. So regardless of disability, someone could come in physically into the training environment. Do we have the right equipment so that everyone who wants to come can play? How do we build in those kind of peer mentorship opportunities? So when we started doing outdoor training, we'd have the high performance athletes train, and then the beginner practice would overlap so that the high performance athletes could be on the track with those brand new athletes. And so there was that peer aspect that Jess has spoken about so many times as being so critical. So for me, I always look at it through the perspective of the athlete, and like, what would they be nervous about, or what things would make me feel supported or comfortable in that environment, and then build that program so that those areas get covered for them, so they have that fun, positive experience.
Great, thanks so much. And this is a question that I'd like to hear sort of from each of you and your perspective, but how would you say your coach-athlete relationship has evolved over time? And maybe this goes a bit back to Curtis and talking about learnings. Like, what did you learn from the beginning to what you're doing now? Has it changed a lot, or is it the same? And maybe we can start with Jess. Maybe you can talk about that to start.
Yeah, definitely. So for Curtis and I, we were teammates ever since 2010 to 2018 when he retired. So we kind of already had that mutual friendship and respect for each other. But it definitely, I think, was a big learning curve going from, that teammate relationship to that now coach and athlete. Because, as our previous coach, Ken, talked about, is, the coach needs to know the athlete probably a little bit better than even the parents do. So it was kind of about me feeling, and for Curtis too, us feeling comfortable about sharing, some of the things that, we probably wouldn't have shared with each other if when we were just teammates. So just kind of finding that balance of, getting that comfort level as well, to share kind of those things. I think we're doing a lot better now. And I'm really excited about, how far we've come in our relationship, and, how much further we're going to go. And I think one of the things that's been so important for our relationship is just the memory of Curtis's dad, and just everything that, he taught us. And that's just something that, we want to honor and continue on doing.
Great. Curtis, can you share a bit about, Jess has sort of touched on the transition that you guys had from being sort of athletes together on the same team to transitioning to that coach-athlete relationship, and maybe your thoughts are a bit different, or how do you feel how things have evolved over time in working together?
Oh, geez. It's gotten a lot, I wouldn't say different, but a few things have changed. I went from more of a joking around athlete to athlete, jab here and there on the track, to more of a serious role. This is what we got to do. This is, what we set out to do now. So it hasn't changed, but it has changed because I still, I like to make it fun. I still do those little bit of jabs here and there, bit of motivation, bit of teasing. But I also do have that serious side of, okay, this is what we got to do. This is our plan, or this is what we've set out to do. So yeah, it's changed, but I guess it hasn't changed in a sense. It's just gotten a bit more serious than what it would have been as an athlete to athlete relationship.
For sure. Excellent. And Lisa, can you touch a bit on maybe how things have evolved, or maybe not, as a coach working with an athlete over time, and any work that you've done with Jess? Lisa, can you touch on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to what Jess had already said in terms of just getting more comfortable. And so, again, for me, when I first came in, it was all of a sudden had the whole program thrown at me and not really knowing all the uniquenesses and the characteristics and all those aspects that come with each individual, regardless if it's an athlete with a disability. And so it took a little bit just to kind of get my feet on the ground and kind of know what makes each athlete tick. And as soon as I understood what communication was like, what they responded to best and what they wanted to achieve in their goals, then I adjusted my communication style or the way that I coached them. So I was still doing or following my philosophy or my core things, but just adjusting it so that I was kind of meeting that athlete halfway, which I think is really important. I think that's where you see the strongest athlete-coach relationships emerge, is where it's that two-way street and you both have respect and expectations of each other, and you're both trying to grow and evolve in your role. So as an athlete, they're trying to continue to progress and reach their goals, and as a coach, you're trying to get better at your way that you communicate, become more knowledgeable in the sport. And so for me, I feel like working with Jess and working with the other cruiser athletes is just, once I kind of got to know them, we were able to really make some huge gains. And then as new athletes are coming in, it's just making sure that they feel comfortable. And then once you get that kind of underway, then you're able to really figure out what makes them tick and what you can do to support them in whatever their journey is in sport.
Great. So on that, Lisa, you've touched on some key things there in terms of what has contributed to the success. So when you talk about sort of really making sure you provide a space where the athletes feel comfortable, as well as really that importance of that relationship and getting to know one another and getting to understand one another. And those are key factors to success. Anything else you would say that has really sort of contributed to the success that exists right now within the Cruiser Club, as well as your relationship with your athletes, your relationship with Jess, and even with other coaches? Any other key things, Lisa, that you would identify are key contributors to success?
I think Curtis touched on it earlier as a coach, of just like that constant learning and being open to learning and knowing that like you are strong in your skill set, but there is still so much more to learn out there and to learn about your athlete, to learn about your sport. And so for me, I don't really settle for kind of where I'm at, similar to how the athletes are constantly trying to get better and they have these goals and they want to achieve. I set those for myself as well. And so I think, again, you're just constantly evolving. You're not just staying in that kind of stagnant position. You're looking at resources. You're engaging with other coaches who are in the field and talking with them and looking at how can you be better as a coach and how can you support your athletes better. So I think that has been a successful factor in me continuing to grow within that coach side. And everything for me is that athlete-centered approach. And so I think that when you come at it from that perspective and really look at a person-centered approach, especially when working with athletes with a disability, not focusing on what their disability is going to impede them in being able to do, but what are their strengths and how can we build off those strengths and how can they get better in those strengths. So I think that kind of athlete-centered approach really leads to more athletes being drawn into your program as a coach, and then you being able to have success with them as well.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Jess, can you touch on what you would see as two things? We've heard a bit from Curtis and Lisa based on their recent comments. What would you say are sort of two key factors that have contributed to your success as an athlete? So just recently you competed at Tokyo, had a very successful set of games, and have really grown and been successful as an athlete. And what has contributed to that?
So I think the first thing is definitely the people that I'm so fortunate to be surrounded by. So Curtis, Lisa, my teammates, Nan, Austin, Isaiah, as well as Coach Ken, Curtis's mom, Karen, who's like my Canadian mom. I'm just so fortunate to have so much incredible support around me, because I definitely could not do this without any of them. They're there to, pick me up when I fall down, and they're there to encourage me to continue on when things are good. Just having that support and those people around you that believe in you so much really helps you to just believe in yourself and believe in the goals that you're setting for yourself. And then I also think, I'm a very determined person. So that definitely has been a huge factor in especially on the days where, you wake up and you're sore from a workout and you don't want to go do another one, just to keep pushing through and persevering through that. So I definitely think those are the two main things.
Great. And you've all touched on it a couple of times, but I think what the Thom family has done within the parasport community has been phenomenal to grow it and to really contribute to the success. And you look at the Cruisers Club and the leadership that Ken provided to create that space is pretty phenomenal. And I feel fortunate that I had a chance to work with him in that parasport world, because it was quite an incredible learning experience. And I think, Curtis, you touched on when I hear you talk about sort of always providing that fun environment, there's times to be serious, but there's always space to sort of have a laugh and enjoy. And as soon as you say that, your dad comes up for me. And I think about Ken, and he's like, your dad, he's like, picks that time. It's like, and it's finding that space. And I like that you talked about that is there's a time to be serious, but there's a time to really like have a laugh and enjoy and finding that right balance. And so, Curtis, you talked about sort of transitioning to that and that's how the relationship has evolved. And I really like that point, is finding that balance that works and providing that space that's really, and I think it goes back to, it's all sort of linking where you talk about being comfortable. And Lisa, you talked about providing a space where athletes can be comfortable. And so all of that contributes, which is fantastic. So I want to talk a bit about, in some situations, clubs or coaches may not feel they have sufficient knowledge to be able to support a para-athlete. And as a result, may decline a request from an athlete to join their club, or may sort of steer away from starting a club or starting a program. What would you tell them to sort of make them feel more comfortable or open their eyes to the opportunities that exist? What would you share? Curtis, can you share a bit as to what you would share with a coach or a club if they're hesitant to embrace working with para-athletes?
That's a tough one. It's just, I guess, understanding the person and their abilities in what they can do to start out, and working with that, and looking at the positive sides, and always being encouraging of those little goals that you can set as someone with a disability, to better themselves, or to work to that, what they would like to do in that activity. With wheelchair racing, we start out, getting them into the chair, getting them comfortable with the chair and the position, and then you have them go out and do 50 meters or 100 meters, and you work on that for a little bit. And once they're comfortable with that, okay, now let's make it a little bit further. So there's those little goals that you want to set, and just knowing that each little goal you set, each little challenge, is a good thing for each individual with the disabilities.
That's
yeah.
No, that's great. It is a tough question, but I would say one that is really a big barrier in communities, and there's a lot of athletes that miss out on an opportunity to participate and become engaged with a club because coaches maybe feel overwhelmed or unsure, or feel like they can't meet the needs of a para athlete because they automatically assume that they're not educated or skilled in that area. And so as a result, I think we need to be delivering those key messages. So Lisa, anything you would share on that side of things that would help any coach that's considering or maybe approached by a para athlete to join the club? What would you share with them?
Yeah, from my experience, whenever I've worked with any able-bodied coaches, because again, out in BC, I coached in the seated throws realm, and a lot of the technical aspects of throws is the same. How you hold a shot put, how you hold a discus is the same. It's just the chair and the transferring and the rules that come that were different. And so when we would have athletes in the region approach a club or ask about joining, and they would reach out to us, every time the coaches were just like, well, like, I don't know how to do this. And it's, well, no, you do. Any athlete who comes to your club, when they first approach, you have that initial conversation. You ask what their goals are. You find out what events they want to do. Do they have any injuries or any restrictions that they should be aware of? Like, approach it from the same aspect, but then reach out to those in the parasport community to help provide you with that disability-specific knowledge. The parasport community is extremely, extremely supportive. I grew up in the able-bodied sports system, and I felt the sense of community in the able-bodied sports side, but the disability community, it truly feels like a family, and everyone's there to support and help people grow. And so reach out to those within your community, reach out to those that are doing the sport. There's people across the country who are knowledgeable and are totally willing to help out and reach and support on that disability side. When you know your sports side, you know your facility, you know that environment. And a lot of times we would encourage them just to come out and volunteer at an event, just so that they became more comfortable in communicating or working with people with disabilities. So I'd really encourage a club not to immediately put up the guard, but just do some exploring, do some reaching out and see. And you can be transparent with that athlete. You can say, I've never worked with a wheelchair racing athlete, but if you're willing to learn it with me, I'm willing to do that too, and figure it out together. You don't have to be an expert on that disability side. If you just approach them like a regular athlete, any athlete that comes to your club, you can grow and learn together. And I think that's how that athlete-coach relationship evolves too in those integrated clubs, because there are coaches who are just open and honest and willing to learn. And quite frankly, that's how those programs all start. And that's how you kind of get engaged within the community if you're coming from that able-bodied side.
And I love that. Like, I really, that message that you just shared is that just have that open and honest conversation and just say, I'm willing to learn if you're willing to learn with me. Like, I just had to say that again because I love the way that you have framed that. And it really opens up versus sort of automatically closing that door, is have that open conversation. And by doing that right up front, you're building that open line of communication. And you're not trying to pretend. And you're not closing the door on it. So really like that. And Jess, share with us, what would you say to a coach or a club that you potentially could be working with, or was looking to work with other athletes? What advice would you give them?
I think just don't be afraid to meet the challenge. And I think, it can grow you more as a coach as well, working with someone with a disability. I know that when I started at Brock University in 2011, I went into the gym there, and I went up to one of the trainers there, and I said, right, I'm here. This is, I'm trying to get to the 2012 Paralympic Games. I need a trainer here that I could come and see 3 days a week to help me in the gym. And I talked to a gentleman there named Scott, and he was absolutely fantastic. And he was like, "Yep, I'll take you on. Let's do this." And I think just having that attitude of, yes, this might be a challenge, and it's probably going to be a little rocky at the start, but like Lisa said, just continually working on that relationship and being open and honest and communicating is definitely key.
Excellent. And I just have one more question before we do wrap up for tonight. But I just wanted to reiterate, and I like to sort of emphasize some of the key points you make. And you talk about overall, the clear message that's come from all of you today is the parasport community is a small, very tight-knit, supportive community. And so don't be afraid to reach out and ask, because there's always going to be somebody who's willing to spend the time to share their knowledge, to point you in the right direction, to support you as a coach or a club as you go down a new endeavor, if you're starting a new program. So there's so much support out there, which is really fantastic to grow the para-athlete and parasport community. So just to wrap things up, sort of a final question. What within, and I'm sure the list is probably quite extensive, with what the Cruisers Club has done to create a space that really has allowed coaches and athletes to thrive. But what would you say is really critical to ensure everybody within a club and training environment feels supported and connected with one another? So I know the Cruisers Club focuses on parasport, but just whether it's all parasport or whether it's an integrated club where athletes, maybe a swim club where there's able-bodied athletes and there's para-athletes competing, what would you say has really contributed to creating a very supportive, connected training environment for everybody, whether it's coaches, whether it's athlete to athlete? What would you say? And I'll start with Jess. Share with us, what would you say has been the best?
I think just the friendships that we've all formed with each other. I think, when we come together, we're all, working towards similar goals, and we all want to see each other succeed at achieving those goals. So I think just having that community behind us and that opportunity to meet so many different people. And, for Cruisers, they do a number of different sports. It's not just para-athletics. So having that opportunity even to meet other people in other sports and learn about that, I think has been really critical in the success of the program.
Great. Excellent. Curtis, share with us a bit, even like when we talk about sort of you transitioning from being an athlete into a coaching role, what was critical in terms of the space and environment for you within the club that really supported you to feel that you could move into that coaching role and the sport support maybe you had around you, or what was that environment like for you?
Well, I guess it was, I was lucky enough to go into the organization that I already knew the athletes because I was a former athlete with them. So we already had that family relationship. We were close, so that helped a lot. It was I definitely think family, being close, and like Jess was saying, everyone's goals were similar, so it was all an encouraging atmosphere of everyone just wanting the next person to be or to get to their goal and see them achieve their goals.
Excellent. I love that. Like that support, they're all there to support one another. Nobody's like up against one another and wanting to sort of achieve any more than the other person had. And it's all about sort of working to create an environment where the person next to you can achieve their goals and celebrating their achievements, and creating that family environment. And Jess, you talked about fun, and to hear that and the importance of that at any stage in your sporting career. So whether you're at the grassroots level, or whether you're active for life, or whether you're at a high performance, like you're a high performance athlete. And the first thing you said was fun, like creating that space. And that's critical to you achieving what you did in your athletic career. So I love it. And Lisa, to wrap up, what would you say is really been critical for the environment in which the Cruisers has created, or any clubs you've been involved in before, to create that supportive, collaborative environment to train in?
Well, Erin, you just said everything I was going to say, so that was a perfect wrap up. But yeah, like Jess and Curtis said, I think that social, or that peer environment, or that fun environment where people are able to achieve their goal, no matter what it is, at whatever level, is so key. And if I look at it outside of Cruisers, or from an integrated club perspective, it's again looking at it through that athlete's lens. And so if there is, say, just one individual with a disability, what can you do for that individual to make the environment supportive, whether it's the physical environment of how they access the facility, how you structure your program, but that social side is so critical. How can you make them feel a part of the team, where they're not that one individual with a disability training on their own while the rest are doing something else? So really creating that environment where that social and that family and that support gets built in for that athlete is so critical.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you all enough for the messages you've shared, the knowledge you've shared, your experiences, your journey. I know that the Cruisers Club has grown so much, and so many successful athletes have worked through that club. And I appreciate you sharing a lot in regards to Curtis, your dad, Ken's journey, and the impact that had on your club, and working through those pieces, and that family environment has been critical. And I think because that space was provided before, it just continued and allowed you all to move through and continue on your journey. And so I really appreciate everything you've shared tonight, and for joining us and talking. And there are so many coaches and clubs that are going to benefit from listening to this segment and being able to take that away. So thank you again for your time. And I wish you all the best as you continue on in your coaching and athletic journey. So thank you very much for joining us.